Hello and welcome to GBN America with me, Patrick Christys. With an increasingly bitter election campaign ramping up, some of the core issues are really coming to the fore. One of those, of course, is illegal immigration. And just this week, FBI Director Chris Wray testified to the Senate about some of the problems that we are seeing in America with illegal immigration, specifically to do with crime. And I'm very pleased to say that I am joined now on GBN America by Wilbur Chapman, who's had 35 years experience in the NYPD. Wilbur, thank you. I'm keen to know, to what extent has crime risen, do you think, in the last few years?
Good afternoon. Well, if we look at crime currently, it's substantially higher than it was in the pre-pandemic years of 2018 and 2019. So New York City is undergoing a crime increase, although the use of data can be quite flexible, and they like to compare it with last year, where there was a slight decline in crime compared to the year before, but it's still up in comparison to where it was prior to the pandemic.
What kind of crimes are we seeing?
We're looking at serious crime. Number one, there's a lot more violence. It's felonious assaults, attacks on people, forcible robberies, shootings and homicides have gone down slightly, but that's not really the bellwether. In addition to that, there's been a huge increase because of change in laws in property crime, where you see recidivists basically looting stores over and over again, being arrested and then turned loose again. So there's a genuine sense that, as some say, New York City is the safest big city in the world, except if you're a victim of crime. So this all gives to a sense of insecurity on the part of people who work there and live there, and a concern as to whether or not the laws changed to benefit the criminals rather than to benefit law enforcement and the population at large.
What are some of the issues behind this? I mean, apparently last month there was quite a brutal attack on 2 New York police officers that saw 7 migrants arrested. Are issues at the southern border actually having an issue in New York as well?
Well, it certainly are on a number of levels. New York City has always been a sanctuary city, but has never been called upon to activate it. So as a result, when the migrant situation developed and people from the southern border came up, the city was ill-prepared to process people and care for them. In addition to which, we've had an ongoing problem for the last 30 years. The shelter system in New York City has been an absolute disaster, where homeless people and those with mental issues who were had no place to go after the state institutions were closed in the late 70s, early 80s, would prefer to be on the train and be on the street than be in the homeless shelter system, because it doesn't support their needs and they don't feel safe, or to have ongoing, or is there an apparatus to give ongoing treatment to those who have psychological issues. The city has failed in this regard for years, and now it's showing itself in the manifestation of crime, homelessness in the subways, and just a sense of no one is paying attention to the neediest, and as a result, the general population is suffering.
I'm hearing reports as well of actually imported crime, gangs, specifically from Venezuela, and I believe this might be linked to drugs. Is that an issue?
Well, it seems to be that this Venezuelan gang, there's information going out that they may be trying to form an alliance with MS-13, which is an established gang that's plagued part of Long Island in New York State, and has some tentacles or attempting to establish some tentacles in the city itself. With every population, no matter who it is, there's always that percentage of people that are lawless, and they're coming through the same way they have in other immigrant groups in the past. And it really doesn't seem to be anything exceptional, other than right now, with crime going up, gang activity can only exacerbate that.
And you mentioned earlier on about the laws. I was going to ask you, look, what's causing all of this crime? I mean, obviously importing criminals is not going to help as well. But you mentioned a bit there about the legal system and people, repeat offenders being repeatedly allowed out. I know I see videos of people just going in and shoplifting. You only do that if you really do not fear the law. So what's happening there? What's causing all of this?
There was a change in state law in terms of bail reform on one hand, and getting rid of immunity, situational immunity for police officers. So if police officers took action and it wasn't deemed appropriate, they wouldn't be indemnified. So that caused some hesitancy. But on the other side, in order to overcompensate for what local legislators thought was an unfair bail policy and incarceration policy, they erred on the side of being much too lenient. Unless someone commits a heinous crime, a very vicious crime, violent crime, they can't be held without bail or high bail set. So all of these property crimes, is the ones I articulated before, those breaking into stores and looting, doing other things, they're property crimes. So as a result, these people who commit these crimes are being released on their own recognizance, and they're coming back and becoming recidivists. So you have a small segment of the population that are repeat offenders, but there's nothing being done to them. And as anybody who knows in law enforcement, if there are no consequences, you will have repeated behavior. And these recidivists are not only causing havoc on the merchants in the city of New York, they're creating a problem where people in general feel that if they are attacked or accosted in any way, there's no recourse through the legal system. The legislature has to go back and revise this in a way that's fair, so someone who was arrested for stealing a bag of potato chips isn't put away for 4 years pending trial. But by the same token, someone who commits a crime 7, 8, 9 times has a proclivity for lawless behavior, and they certainly should be held on either high bail or remanded without the possibility of being released until trial, just for the good of society.
Yeah, for the good of society. But for the good of society, you need people to feel confident that they can walk the streets without facing criminality. They need to feel confident that if they do call the police are going to act. The police need to feel confident that they're going to be backed up by the full force of the law as well, and that these problems aren't going to be exacerbated by external factors such as the importation of foreign crime as well. Look, Wilbur, thank you very much. I could talk to you all day about this, but we've really set the world to rights there, and I look forward to having you back on at GBN America at some point very, very soon. That is the wonderful Wilbur Chapman there. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Well, no matter what your views are about the southern border, the fact is that there are millions of people making their way into America via that route. But it's not just that route. No, the Biden administration has recently admitted to flying 320,000 migrants into America, giving them refuge in places like these sanctuary cities. So here to talk to me more about what's really going on is the wonderful David Leopold, who is a Chambers-ranked corporate immigration lawyer, but has also worked with the Biden-Harris administration. So this will be fascinating. I'm aware that you've worked for the Biden-Harris transition team and presidential campaign as well. How do you rate what's going on at the southern border and Joe Biden's response to illegal immigration? From an outsider's perspective like mine, looking at that southern border, it just looks absolutely horrendous. Has he done enough?
Well, look, the southern border has been a problem not only for President Biden, but for Trump before him, for Obama before him, and for George Bush before him. We have an issue at the southern border, and the problem is that we don't have an immigration system that makes any sense or that works. So what's happened is immigrants from all over the world have defaulted to the asylum system, and it's a mess, and Congress needs to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But people have been crying out for this for a very long time. And am I right in saying that, the United Nations are refusing to actually change their definition of an asylum seeker? So essentially, as it stands, anyone moving from a poorer country to a wealthier country, pretty much any woman, pretty much anybody who is gay or claiming to be gay, or from a country that is deemed, frankly, worse than America in a human rights standing, could essentially just come to America and claim asylum.
Well, American law is pretty broad on that. Anybody can claim asylum who enters the country, whether or not they enter at a port of entry or whether they enter between the ports of entry, regardless of how they get here. Getting asylum, though, is a different story, and it's a very high standard. As you point out, it's not easy to get asylum. The problem is that the system is so overwhelmed that folks who are waiting for their asylum interviews and their day in court end up waiting for years, and that has to be fixed. Otherwise, we've got an overwhelmed immigration system, asylum system, and this problem is never going to end, regardless of who's sitting in the White House.
Yeah, how do you fix that though without just waving people through? I mean, what level of security is there, and
Yeah.
also what is to prevent people from just going missing in that years long process of asylum applications?
Well, look, it's not going to be fixed overnight. You're right, but you have to have grown-ups sitting down, Republicans, Democrats, whomever, sitting down and saying, "Hey, look, we're going to put politics out of this, and we are going to fix this." Now, you have a situation where the Republicans in Congress, just authored a bill that would have brought $118 billion to fix at least the beginning of the fix of this system, restricting asylum, doing a lot of things that people on the pro-immigration advocates were appalled about, but it was compromised. The problem is you've got a guy running for president named Donald Trump who would rather put his own political fortunes first and shut it down. Even the Republicans who wrote it weren't allowed to support it. So politics is the problem here at the moment. And, we need a long-term solution. And that is a very complex problem.
I understand. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But then I look at stats like the Biden administration flying 320,000 migrants secretly into the US to reduce the number of crossings. I also wonder about the language being used here as well.
Where did you come up with that?
Are these people illegal immigrants? Are they asylum seekers?
Well,
are they
first of all,
dreamers?
there's no evidence
Because the language matters here.
Well, yeah, it does matter, and so do the facts. And with respect, that I don't know where you heard this about 300 some odd thousand people. That's just disinformation. So I'm going to push back against that. But that said, again,
they've admitted to it.
Okay, show me the fact, but I'm not going to argue the point. It is disinformation. They don't fly people secretly into the country. That makes no sense. You do have a parole program, and maybe that's what you're referring to. Or there is a Unite for Ukraine program, and those folks come here, not at our expense, but they do come here. So there are various parole programs. Some Republicans call that illegal. Maybe that's what you're referring to. But as far as somebody crossing the border and applying for asylum, the law entitles them to do that. Now, I'm not going to, words do matter, illegal, legal, whatever. The only people, technically, if you want to talk technicalities under the law, the only people who are actually illegally in the United States, meaning that their very presence in the United States is a crime, are people who have been deported and re-enter without any kind of authorization. Other people, people who cross the southern border without permission, yes, that's a federal misdemeanor. But their actual presence in the United States, to be technical here, is a civil violation. I'm not apologizing for it. I'm just answering your question. Look, we can go back and forth about what's legal, what's illegal.
I am just going to push. I am just going to push back here, though, because Joe Biden's administration has admitted transporting migrants on secret flights to the US and lawyers for its immigration agencies. Customs and Border Protection has refused to disclose crucial information about a program last year arranging flights for thousands of undocumented immigrants from foreign airports directly to US cities. This is the result of a Freedom of Information request, and it has been the subject of a lawsuit to get that information out there. The program was part of Biden's expansion of the CBP One app, which kicked off at the start of last year. Migrants were able, under this, to apply for asylum using the app from their home countries. So they have admitted to this, so it did happen.
Well, we're not talking about, but you characterized it, Patrick, as transportation of illegal immigrants into, like they're trying to do something nefarious under the table and bring in undocumented immigrants. It's just not true. What you're talking about is the CBP One app, which is an app the government put out that people could apply for asylum from outside the country so that they don't come to the southern border. And then if they pass their credible fear interview, they pass the first step, yes, they can come in for a hearing. That's what you're talking about. Okay, and that is, whether that's a good solution or not, it certainly is not nefarious illegal immigration. Let's call things what they are.
Is it a good solution? I mean, is it a good solution? I mean, if I was a US taxpayer, I would probably question why my government was spending, potentially billions of dollars there, importing people, then assessing those people, then deciding whether or not they were going to boot that out. I mean, that does to me look like a kind of Uber service for people who some of them may well be illegal.
Well, look, They're not illegal if they're applicants for asylum, right? Because they're entitled to their day in court. I would rather have them come in from a remote destination than come to the southern border.
But anyone can claim asylum. So, but this is the point. This is the key point, though,
no,
isn't it?
No,
So
not true.
respect,
actually,
anyone can claim asylum.
No, that's not true. People who have serious criminal convictions, people who have engaged in torture themselves, people who have been persecutors, no, they cannot apply for asylum in the United States. People who have been previously deported from the United States, no, they cannot apply for asylum in the United States. But the thing is, this whole thing that you're talking about with flying people and that, if we want to shut down illegal or undocumented immigration at the southern border, one way to do that is to do interviews in remote countries, right? And which is what's going on. And if they pass those interviews, the credible fear interviews, then yes, they have the right to come before an immigration judge in the United States. So either you can't win with this kind of rhetoric, because no matter what happens, people are coming in. Now, that said, the real question is, do we want people in the United States? And you know what our Congressional Budget Office says? That if with immigration, we're looking at $7 trillion in increase in our gross domestic product over the next decade with immigration. We need immigrants in the United States. Bottom line, there are companies here that are looking.
What does that mean per capita, though? To be fair, because we have a similar situation over here where people say, well, it increases our GDP, but then you look at it per capita and we're worse off. Is that the same over there?
Well, we're not worse off. This country was built on immigration. We've never been worse off on immigration. Please show me a time in U.S. history when we were worse off because of immigration. Immigration brought us the innovators of Google. Immigration brought us the innovators of complex medicine. Immigration brought us all kinds of people. Some people that I don't agree with politically, like Elon Musk.
Did the person?
Yeah, fine.
Did the person who invented Google cross the border illegally and was a member of MS-13? No.
Well, wait a minute. That's kind of a compound question, and let's be really clear here. Most immigrants, most crime in the United States is caused by native-born U.S. citizens. Most of the fentanyl that's brought into the United States is brought in 89% by U.S. citizens. Why? Think about it logically. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to the port of entry, because if they're U.S. citizens, they're less likely to be checked. It's ludicrous to think that undocumented people are bringing in crime. That's a Donald Trump talking point, which is designed to appeal to American fear. That's all that is. No facts to back that up.
Yeah, apart from the 2 New York police officers which saw 7 migrants attack them, and they have now been arrested. One of them is in jail as a result of that. So, I mean, there are facts, aren't there?
Well, the right-wing media likes to take these things and blow it up and make it look like that's every immigrant. Crime is crime. The issue is not immigrant. The issue is crime in the United States, right? And it's appalling the way folks will take that and broad sweep all immigrants with crime, when actually the statistics and those who study the issue, including the FBI, including other law enforcement agencies, all the findings are that immigrants, by far less in this country, I don't know about the UK, but in this country, are far less likely to cause crime. It's bottom line. It's the truth.
David, look, thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate you on here. It's nice to have a good, robust discussion. I'm sure a lot of our viewers will have learned a heck of a lot there. That's David Leopold. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's a wrap for today. So for the latest from America, make sure that you go to gbnews.com/America.